Hello, everyone who is watching. My name is Anna, and I'm a program assistant with the Spiritual Life Office. This video is part of a series called I Wonder as I Wander, where we will be unpacking the spiritual wellness for young people who might be experiencing changes in their spiritual life, especially if they are being spiritually independent for the first time in their lives. So for this series, we are going to be talking to different religious advisors here at the University of Chicago, just to kind of gather their perspectives on that specific time in a young person's life. So today with me, I am talking with a very, very important member of our community, and I'll allow you to just introduce the work that you do on campus.
Hi, so my name is Rabbi Yossi Brackman, and I'm the director of the Rohr Chabad Center on campus. We are right at the corner of Woodlawn and 57th Street. We established the center about 18, 19 years ago. And yeah, everyone's welcome.
Wonderful, thank you. So we're specifically today, since Yossi has a lot of experience with Judaism and leading Jewish movements and Jewish interfaith understanding here on campus. We're going to be talking a lot about how the Jewish faith is seated in this discussion of kind of religious identity, establishing religious identity, especially for young people. So to sort of start off, would you like to introduce some of the main beliefs and practices that are most prominent in Judaism?
Yeah, so I would say that there are different components to what it means when someone says, I am Jewish.
Mm.
Um, Judaism is a little different to other faiths in that we're not just a faith.
Mm.
When someone identifies as being Jewish, they don't necessarily mean that they believe in all the basic tenets of the Jewish faith.
Mm.
They don't necessarily mean that they practice all or even any of the commandments as enumerated in the Torah. So, what do they mean when they say they're Jewish? So, I can't tell you what every single person means, but the definition of a Jewish person is found in the Torah itself. The Torah describes the Jewish people as the children of Israel. We consider our founders, not founders, we consider them patriarchs and matriarchs.
Mm.
And this is highly significant because to be Jewish really means to be part of this very long chain, this very long family
Mm.
that has survived. So if you think of it as a group of people that started out as a family, as the Bible itself describes Jacob and his 70 children and grandchildren arriving in Egypt, and that family kind of growing and growing and growing. And the bond that unites Jewish people is more the familial than the faith.
Mm.
Now, of course, this family has its ways about it and the things it does and the things it believes. But at its core, to be Jewish is to be part of this long line of people
Mm.
that have stuck together and clung to their togetherness and to their faith
Mm-hmm.
and survived, whether it was the Roman expulsion from the land of Israel in the year 69 or the Middle Ages and the Inquisition and persecution in various lands in the Middle East from different caliphates and things like that.
Mm.
But at the core, a Jew in one place is the same as a Jew in another place because we see each other as all part of this interconnected family.
Mm.
And just like a family, people can join the family. There's a
Mm-hmm.
process to which you become Jewish, which would be kind of like joining the family. So that's kind of the way I see it.
Okay, very cool. I really want to push on that last point about kind of becoming a part of the family. How exactly would someone who is interested in becoming a part of the family go about that? Is there a set route, or is it a bit more organic and they can just kind of find a community as they go? How would you recommend that?
Yeah, I mean, this is why the family is a very appropriate analogy.
Mm,
Not only because it's kind of accurate, but also because if I wanted to join your family, I can't just say, okay, well, I'm now part of Anna's family because I feel that way.
mhm,
There would have to be some sort of mechanism, or either I
mhm,
married someone into your family, or you decided on your own that you're going to allow people into your family your way.
mhm,
And with Judaism, we do have a process which does require accepting the basic tenets of the faith and practices and a few other things, and after which one becomes part of the Jewish family.
mm,
It would also require giving up whatever whatever was contrary to the Jewish faith. So,
mm,
someone believed in um, certain forms of worship that are forbidden in Judaism.
mm.
They would have to let go of those before embracing Judaism. I mean, you can't live a contradictory lifestyle, if you know what I mean.
Right, right. Okay. So it's a bit of a system of acceptance and then renunciation depending on what lifestyle you're living before Judaism.
Yeah,
Um,
right. So
well,
if you are agnostic, it might be one thing,
mhm,
but if you know, I mean, it's the details are very dependent on who and what and where and.
I'm sure. Um, well, and that kind of brings me to a very common stereotype, at least in the United States, that there are a lot of rules in Judaism and there are a lot of rules to follow. And I was wondering if we could discuss for a bit, first of all, the truthfulness or lack thereof regarding that stereotype, um, and then what that looks like for young people who are embarking on the Jewish path.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if stereotype is the right word.
Mm,
Um, there are definitely rules in Judaism.
mhm,
In general, we hear the word rules and we kind of get very nervous. But the reality of it is that we all live by rules, and people who live by rules tend to be successful and tend to be um, structured and guided, as opposed to people who live this very freestyle without any structure. I mean,
mhm,
structure in our lives is good. Obviously, you don't want to be restricted too much. So, without a doubt, there are rules in Judaism.
mm,
um, if you just need to open the Bible and start reading, and you see lots of rules.
mhm,
And as a people that continue to follow the Hebrew Bible,
mhm,
we follow those rules. Now, so the Talmud discusses how many rules are there actually in the Talmud, in the Torah, in the Bible, and concludes that there are 613 rules. When we
wow.
say rules, we need commandments. So these are not
Mhm,
voluntary.
mhm,
If you read in the Torah and it says that God said do this, then you understand that to be mandatory. However, and this is a very important point, many of those rules, I would say the overwhelming majority of those commandments, are relegated to temple worship, i.e., the temple that stood in Jerusalem until the Romans destroyed it,
mhm,
and therefore are no longer applicable. Many of them are seasonal. For
mm,
example, eating matzah on Passover, you only do that on Passover.
mhm,
The other 350 odd days of the year, you don't do it.
mhm,
Finally, 365 of those rules are things you should not do. In other words, they don't require you to actually get up and do something. They're just, for example, do not steal is a
mhm,
rule, but you don't have to do anything. You just have to keep your hands out of someone else's property.
Right.
And many of those rules are rules that you would do anyway. Like, don't burn down your neighbor's house.
Right.
Or don't cheat on your spouse, right? So those are, many of them are very common sense. And we're not unique to the Jewish faith, although some were. So on a daily basis, there's about 8 or 9 commandments that Jews have to follow. Throughout the year, there's probably about 80 commandments that are still practical. Some of them you only do once every now and then, like putting up a mezuzah on your front door. You don't have to do it every day. You put it once and you leave it up there. So if you boil it down, there are rules. But there's not actually that many. I think where people get struggle is some of the rules make it a little bit difficult to assimilate into society, which can be viewed as a good thing or a bad thing, depends what you want to do. So for example, if you are only eating kosher food, well, that means that it's very difficult for you to go out to eat with friends. However, one could argue that eating kosher is a reminder of my identity. If I know that before every bite I take, I have to check and say, wait a second, is this for me? Right? That reminds me of who I am.
Yeah.
So rules generally are a good thing, actually. They provide discipline.
Right.
And we all know every sociological study will tell you that discipline actually allows for freedom and growth and proper, having a stronger identity.
Absolutely. And I think the place of kind of contention, perhaps a little bit of tension here, is some people view rules as something that inherently restricts, as you mentioned, whereas it seems that you're cultivating more of a perspective of how rules are meant to help us live better lives, both for ourselves and for other people. And it also seems that there's a distinction here between sort of social norms that people would be following anyways. I feel like a lot of social norms are unspoken, unwritten down in many ways, but they're still very important. They're things that we do every day and make sure that we follow in order to not experience negativity or cause negativity. But in this case, sometimes they are written down and they still provide the same effects. Did you have anything that you were just gonna say?
No, I mean, we have restrictions all over our, we raise our child with restrictions. We tell our child, you must brush your teeth. You'd be a fool as a parent to say, what, it doesn't matter. They'll figure it out later once in a while what it means to have good oral hygiene. We tell our children, we are raised on rules. We are not, healthy parents raise their children with rules. There's rules in the house. There's rules on the street. There's rules in school. The notion that rules restrict and therefore is a bad thing is preposterous. It's simply not the case. There are some rules that are overburdensome, but rules as a whole provide for a healthy society, a healthy family, and a healthy person. Okay, and whether it's about nutrition or whether it's about safety or it's nothing to do with about other people. A person that has rules that they don't overeat and they're careful about what they eat is a healthy person, as opposed to the guy who, the one who just decides to eat fast food all day because that's what they enjoy. We don't just do things because we enjoy them. We do what's right. And Judaism, the Torah, has been around for a very, very, very long time. We are probably the oldest religion, certainly in the Western world.
Absolutely.
And I believe that the Torah has shown, besides for our belief is that it's divine, but it's certainly, even if you take that out of the equation, it's shown to provide solid structure and a healthy communities and healthy societies. That's not to say that you can't have religious groups that have gone the wrong way or one way or the other and need a little bit of a, realignment with certain values and so on. Absolutely. But on the whole, I would argue that our long history has shown that the rules of the Torah provide for a solid family life, a solid life of discipline and structure. And I think that's what we all strive for. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
always, if you just turn on the radio and you talk about, is there enough regulation? Is there too little, too much? I mean, no regulation at all, and we're in trouble.
Absolutely. Um, Kind of as we're starting to skirt sort of the social vein of this, I wanted to um, definitely touch on today the role of Judaism in social activism. So for a lot of young people, it's quite important to be active socially as far as defending the environment, defending uh, religious, racial, sexual minorities. And I was wondering what Judaism's relationship to that is, especially the ways that Judaism is affected by those activisms.
So it's a great question. I'm sensing two parts to your question. Is one is there room for social activism within the Jewish tradition, if you will?
Mm.
And then does Judaism fit into being a recipient of that social activism? I think that's what you're asking. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I can't tell you about activism today and what's going to be tomorrow. I mean, those winds keep blowing different directions and they change. And to discuss, one strand of it today or yesterday or tomorrow, I mean, that's not relevant. That's not the point. So I'm not going to go down there. However, there's a very beautiful tradition that the 10 Commandments were given on 2 tablets.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 5 discuss our relationship with God. And the second 5 discuss our relationship with other humans.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 5 say, awareness of God, not worshiping idols, the Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
The second 5 is do not kill, do not steal, do not commit adultery, and so on. And our sages tell us that just like we keep one, we keep the other. In other words, as much as emphasis as we put on our developing a healthy relationship with God, we have to also have that relationship with other humans. The
Right.
Jewish people, the Torah was probably the first book, the first set of laws to recognize things like property rights. You
Mm.
don't have a right to take over someone's property.
Wow.
The first laws that required charity.
Mm-hmm.
We have laws that require us to care for the sick,
Mm-hmm.
to care for the oppressed. Numerous times, I can't remember the number, you could look it up, the Torah requires us not to oppress the stranger amongst us,
Mm-hmm.
the convert, which were minorities. Think about it. If you were in biblical Israel, there was a group of Jews that were converted to Judaism, but they were the minority.
Mm.
And it's very easy for humans to oppress the minority. We kind of almost do it, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
as a species all the
Right.
time. And the Torah multiple times tells us, remember that you were once upon a time a minority enslaved in Egypt.
Mm.
Even when slavery was in place, the Torah requires us that on the Sabbath, the slave cannot work.
Mm-hmm.
Your animals cannot work on the Sabbath. So without a doubt, there is a very strong emphasis on caring for those that are minorities. We're not allowed the Torah forbids gossip. The Torah forbids not paying people on time. I mean, these are all laws in the Torah itself that require us to take care of the needy, to take care of the poor, to take care of the oppressed. How that expresses itself, whether it's in modern activism, whether it's in giving charity, whether it's working for organizations. I mean, there's, I don't want to say that we are required to get involved in political activism. Political activism has all sorts of overtones and discomfort for different people. But without a doubt, we are required to be active in helping those in need, helping those that are oppressed, helping or could be oppressed, preventing oppression. I do think that it is unfortunate that amongst some circles today, Jews are not seen as a minority. Jews make up 2% of the American population.
Wow.
We are 0.2% of the world population. I'm not sure how you define a minority, but to me that sounds like a minority.
I agree.
Now, that's not to say that we need handouts necessarily, but anti-Semitism, acts of anti-Semitism are more prevalent than any other form of acts of hate in the United States.
Wow.
So you could argue, well, Jews are just white and everyone else. That's not how Hitler saw us. And clearly it's not how bigots that spray swastikas on temples see us.
Right.
So, I think that people like to employ a double standard, which is an unfortunate reality of people today. There's a certain self-righteousness that people have, that they get to pick and choose who's a minority without taking into account how those people themselves see themselves.
Absolutely.
There are many people in America who are quite successful, but are still minorities in the sense that they are targets for oppression by members of the wider society. Right. And they need to be protected. It's got nothing to do with doesn't necessarily have anything to do with economic success. Besides, there are lots of Jews that are dirt poor as well. There's nothing to do with economics is not the point necessarily.
Right, absolutely.
So, so to answer your question, absolutely, to be active in social action is definitely a major part of being Jewish. I'm not going to say you have to join this group or that group. You have to do things in the world that are helping others. And I don't think anyone should determine what that means and what that looks like. Everyone can do on their own and figure out if that means that you give food to the homeless on a weekly basis, or if it means you join some, I'm not sure that joining protests and marches is exactly what the Torah means. I think it means real action, where you're actually
effective change.
Yeah, you're actually doing something for that person, not just stomping your feet on the ground. But there's value to that also, I suppose.
Right. I think context is incredibly important. Seeking to do the most effective change is especially important. Putting your activism where it matters most.
My trouble with activism, I just want to share this point. One of there is value to creating awareness about issues, no question about it. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that creating awareness is sufficient.
Oh yeah.
So they may create awareness about, I don't know, homelessness, but they're quite happy to walk by the homeless guy on the street without digging into their pocket. So in Judaism, it's all about the action. Did that guy eat lunch? He didn't eat lunch. whether you creating awareness is not the point. Did you help the guy eat lunch? You didn't help the guy eat lunch. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And your intentions is less important than what you actually do.
Right.
We judge by our actions, not our intentions.
Mm.
And actions mean, I don't mind if anyone goes on marches and protests, but that's not enough. That does not absolve us from real care for another human being that actually does something. And every single one of us could put our money where our mouth is. Whether it's giving charity with your checkbook or credit card, or whether it's going to the store and buying some food for someone, or picking up the phone and calling someone who you know is feeling down. It's got to be real, active change. And on the micro level, being involved in the big demonstrations does not exempt us from taking care of those less fortunate than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that speaks directly to how prevalent Facebook activism is, where there's just a lot of posturing, I feel, on social media these days, where the activism isn't so active like we've been talking about. It's more just stating your opinion, and looking for others' approval, or looking to pick a fight or a debate with somebody who has a different opinion than you. So it serves to sow the seeds of disagreement sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily sow the seeds of change. Would you like to speak to that?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, everybody, social media. I remember when Facebook started, and we always thought to ourselves, okay, this is going to be a wonderful way for me to connect to my old classmates that I haven't seen in who knows how long or whatever.
Right.
My cousin across the country, across the world, can see how what I'm doing on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's become, as a lot of the comment sections of news articles and so many things have become opportunities for people to sit behind the screen and say things that they would never say in public, say things in front of thousands or millions of people that they would never get up and say, because they are, because in real life and in public, they're a little more intelligent and a little more guarded and a little more sensitive.
Right.
And unfortunately, that sensitivity gets lost once they sit behind a screen. And this is a well-documented problem. But the other thing is that it gives people a sense of righteousness. Look what I wrote. And I wrote back to that guy and I told him my opinion. Well, first of all, the other real issue that I think we have today, and this is not relevant to Judaism, to be quite frank, although it might be.
Right, no worries.
The real issues is that we don't seek to understand why the other person formed the opinion they formed. We just assume that they're a bigot, or they're wrong, or they're fools. We're not taking the time to ask the question, why is it that you think that way? What has led you to think that way? And that's a real shame, because both people think they're right. Both people think they're right. We should assume they have a coherent argument and a coherent reason why they think they're right. And if you feel that it's your duty to share with them why they may be wrong, you might want to find out why they think they're right. In other words, why did they come to the opinion that they came to begin with? I mean, we do this. If you read any passage of the Talmud, and you've got these old debates on all sorts of issues, the question is always, why did you think that way? What was your proof? What were you using? What scriptural source were you using to form your conclusion? And is it accurate? Can it be argued? Can I argue against it? This is what we do in Talmud, which, if you go to a Jewish day school, we start teaching those kids at 9 years old by starting this kind of the Socratic method of
Mhm.
thinking and art, asking those questions.
Right. It seems, for one thing, to foster much better critical thinking skills, to be able to not only explain yourself, but expect yourself to inquire that of others. Because, like we were talking about with social media, there is a sense of intimacy in a debate like that, where you are seeking to understand, and you are seeking to understand, not just the other person, but the various pre-assumptions that you are bringing to the table.
Right.
And we just lose that intimacy when we are behind a screen, like we were discussing. um just a final note to kind of leave off on, I was wondering if you could speak to, imagining just young people who are coming to the college for the first time, who might be spiritually independent for the first time, especially during your time as a religious advisor, some advice that you might have for people who are experiencing any kind of shame or fear about changes in their spirituality that are happening because they're newly independent.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that question. It's an interesting time of life. You leave home, and granted, many students don't necessarily come from devoutly religious homes,
Mm.
but they may have grown up with certain practices that they did do, or certain practices they don't do.
Mhm.
Let's give an example. You may have a student that comes to campus and they've always wanted to observe the kosher laws. I'm talking
Mm.
about Judaism. Now, we are very blessed in this campus that the University of Chicago has a commitment that students can eat in every dining hall, basically no matter their diet. I mean, obviously, there may be some students that have challenges somewhere, but generally there's always vegan food. There's always, I know been a big commitment to halal food, and there's a commitment to kosher, which satisfies some Muslim students to a degree as well.
Mhm.
Um, so we're very blessed on this campus.
Mm.
The university is quite sensitive to the religious needs of the community, which is wonderful.
Mhm.
But that can be a challenge for some students, that suddenly they now feel themselves, oh, I'm doing something different than home. Or what happens when I go back home and now I want to observe kosher? It's complicated. It
Mhm.
can be challenging. Um, or let's say a Jewish student wants to wear the kippah. We wear
Mhm.
the yarmulke. And now they feel a little bit, can I do this? What's it going to be like? What are my friends going to think? It's definitely challenging.
Mm.
I think that's your question, is how to navigate that. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So, you know, there is an advantage coming to college in that you're a little bit unencumbered by our parents.
Mhm.
And it's definitely a time of exploration. It's a
Mm.
time where our identity kind of really gets solidified or formed, or changes a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, I would say that for the number one, Chabad House, we're here to support and help students on that path. The other thing I would say is baby steps.
Mm.
Radical change does not happen overnight. You look
Mhm.
at people that make resolutions on January 1st. This year, I'm never going to do this or that. It doesn't happen. Baby steps,
Mhm.
smart goals, small, measurable goals are the key to everything in life. We're not wired for radical change.
Mm.
It takes a long time to integrate certain things into our life, into our behavior, into our thinking. We start thinking differently. So I would say baby steps. Students sometimes want to observe Shabbat. I would say, why don't you start with Friday night or
Mm.
Saturday, or maybe don't go shopping on Shabbat.
Mm.
If you still want, because we don't engage in commerce because it's
Mhm.
type of work. But if you still want to do your homework, which is obviously a greater priority, do that. And maybe eventually, or turn off your phone for at least for a few hours. So baby steps are really, really important. And finding other students like-minded. If you come to Chabad house and you interact with other students that are also doing the Shabbat, or also coming to a class on Judaism, you see you're not the only one. It's very, very hard to do things if you feel alone. If you find a group of students that are coming together to do things similarly, that can be very, very rewarding and really helpful. So that's my suggestion.
Wonderful. Yeah, it sounds, first of all, like there's plenty of community here for students who are seeking that. I agree that that's a very big hump to get over. But yes, wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. If any students want to reach out, I have a very easy email address, rabbi@uchicago.edu. Feel free to send me an email, and I'm more than happy to either grab coffee, either socially distant or over Zoom, or otherwise respond. And more than happy to help. You don't have to be Jewish. I'm more than happy to just chat with anybody on campus. That's what we're here for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.